When you enter this space with me, leave behind haste, fears, and the need to understand everything rationally. Here, I don't speak to your restless mind. I speak to the silent core of your being, to the part of you that has always known there is something greater than what the eyes can see. Listen with your spirit, because the truth I will tell you does not bow to the physical world. It transcends it. It governs it. There is a law that governs all movements of life, a law that no man can break because it is what sustains the very fact of existence. This law states that everything, absolutely everything, is a consequence of the inner state you choose to inhabit. Before something appears in the visible world, it has already been completed within someone. Before any external change, there was a silent, intimate, unshakable change in spirit. And that is why so few truly transform their lives, because they look for in the effects what only exists in the causes. The world lives distracted. It believes that high vibration is a smile, forced optimism, pretty phrases glued to the wall. But I tell you, high vibration has nothing to do with appearance. High vibration is inner authority. It is the silent certainty of one who knows that the visible has no power over anything. It is the state of one who has discovered that imagination is the only reality, and that everything that happens outside is just a delayed reflection of what was assumed within. One who vibrates high is not impressed by chaos, does not cling to circumstances, does not bow to fear, because they have understood that nothing, absolutely nothing, can contradict the state they sustain with conviction. You came here seeking 3 signs, but these signs are not magical effects, nor extraordinary manifestations that attract crowds. They are hidden signs, signs that only appear to those who have already broken free from the old habit of reacting to the world. Signs that emerge when the spirit finally accepts its inheritance, that of a creator, not a victim, that of a cause, not a consequence. And before revealing them, you need to understand something many go their entire lives without realizing. Vibration is not energy you try to raise. Vibration is an identity you assume. It is the inner place from where you think, feel, and observe the world. When this identity changes, everything changes. When it expands, everything rises. When it aligns with what is true, the world has no choice. It bends. Therefore, listen to me with complete presence. Do not seek to understand it, allow yourself to remember. For what I am about to reveal is not new. It is as ancient as the very breath of creation. It is the secret that transforms ordinary men into masters of themselves. It is what differentiates those who shine effortlessly from those who spend their lives trying to appear strong. Prepare yourself, because from now on, every word is meant to reactivate within you the awareness of who you have always been. The one who creates, the one who commands, the one who vibrates so high that reality responds as a faithful echo of what they sustain within themselves. The first sign of someone who possesses the highest vibration on the planet is so silent that the common man would never recognize it. They look outward, see chaos, and react as they have learned their entire lives, with fear, despair, urgency. But one who vibrates high does not move according to what happens around them. Before any action, they maintain an inner stillness that the world confuses with indifference, but which in truth is mastery. It is not apathy, it is authority. They know that every circumstance that presents itself has already been concluded much earlier in the invisible. And because they know this, they do not try to correct what they see. They merely return to the state they chose, like one returning to the center of an invisible temple only they know. This stillness is not natural to the common man. It does not arise spontaneously. It is built, assumed, protected like a treasure. It is a continuous decision not to be swept away by the storm, even when the wind howls. One who vibrates high observes situations that provoke others, but within themselves remains intact, like a rock surrounded by waves. They see negative news, financial crises, others' judgment, a door closing, but none of this awakens a panic instinct in them. They do not make hasty decisions, do not try to force paths, do not beg for signs. They return inward, to the state they chose before any event, and there sustain the conviction the world does not yet perceive. Scripture says, "In quietness and in trust shall be your strength." It is not in haste, not in despair, not in the frantic attempt to control reality. It is in stillness, this inner immobility that does not depend on the external scene. One who vibrates high understands that the external world is just a delayed echo. So, if the echo does not please them, they do not fight with the sound, they change the source. And the source is always the inner state. Therefore, when confronted by problems, they do not react like one trying to put out fires. They respond like one who knows the fire only exists because there was a spark within. They extinguish the spark, and the world adjusts. Most people try to find peace when the situation improves, but the person of high vibration does the opposite. They find peace first, and because of that, the situation improves. This inversion is the secret. The common man is governed by the senses. The awakened one governs the senses with what they have decided to feel. While some wait for the world to give them reasons to trust, the other creates reasons within themselves, and the world ultimately obeys. This is not mysticism, it is law. Physical reality has no will of its own. It follows the mold you sustain in the invisible with intensity and persistence. When this sign awakens in someone, their demeanor changes. They walk around with a serenity that bothers those who live in imbalance. They speak slowly, look with depth, breathe with awareness. They do not act out of urgency, but out of inner direction. When they need to decide, they decide. When they need to wait, they wait. And all this without anxiety, without the tremor that dominates most. Their stillness is so profound it seems supernatural. And it is precisely this stillness that alters the events around them. When they remain firm within, the world begins to realign situations, people, and circumstances to harmonize with the state they sustain. This is the true power, not the power to manipulate the external, but to master the internal to the point where the external has no choice. When you achieve this stillness, this firmness that does not depend on what you see, the world will begin to treat you differently. Doors that once closed will begin to open. Problems that seemed impossible will begin to dissolve. People who once provoked you will lose their power over you. Because the world does not respond to your effort, it responds to your state. And one who can remain serene in the midst of chaos no longer vibrates like others. They vibrate above. They vibrate at the level of the cause, not the effect. They vibrate where everything begins and where everything obeys. The second sign of someone who possesses the highest vibration on the planet is not in their words, nor in their outward attitudes, but in the way they interpret life itself. While the common man looks at events and classifies them as good or bad, one who vibrates high sees everything as a message, direction, and confirmation. They do not live reacting, they live deciphering. Every situation, every encounter, every delay, every apparent coincidence gains for them a symbolic depth that the superficial world cannot perceive. They read life as one reads a sacred text, full of metaphors that speak directly to the state they have already decided to inhabit. When something unexpected happens, they do not cast themselves as a victim, nor do they enter the mental game of asking, why? The common mind wants explanations. Elevated consciousness wants perception. The common man says, this shouldn't have happened. One who vibrates high says, what does this reveal about the state I am sustaining? They do not look for fault, do not look for culprits, do not look for justifications. They seek internal coherence. They understand that the physical world is merely the projection of the imagined world, and therefore every event brings, hidden, a confirmation of something happening within their own interior. And because they live in this symbolic posture, they begin to perceive synchronicities that go unnoticed by hurried eyes. Small encounters gain meaning. Random words sound like answers. Obstacles transform into perfect detours. Paths that seemed long mysteriously shorten. They begin to feel that everything around them is conversing with them, and it is. For when someone vibrates high, their frequency creates a field so stable that reality responds with alignments that seem like miracles to those who do not know the law. They do not need to convince themselves that everything has a purpose. They see the purpose, not because life became easier, but because their perception elevated. They see the invisible behind the visible. They read the spiritual meaning behind the physical movement. And this profound reading does not depend on favorable circumstances. It appears precisely in difficult moments when the common world is busy complaining, doubting, or despairing. One who vibrates high, on the contrary, observes the same scenario and silently says, "This is moving me toward where I already am." They do not see delay, they see alignment. They do not see loss, they see a change of level. They do not see failure, they see adjustment. This sign is so powerful because it changes one's relationship with life. They cease to be commanded by events and begin to command them through the interpretation they choose to sustain. Scripture says, "To the pure, all things are pure." In other words, you can only see in the world what is vibrating within you. Therefore, when the vibration is high, one's entire life converts into confirmation. Everything becomes language. Everything becomes a symbol. Everything becomes an answer. And thus, while the common man passes unnoticed through their own existence, elevated consciousness walks as one walking inside a living temple. Every detail is a reminder of what they have decided to be. Every event is part of the internal logic of their assumed state, and that is why reality, instead of resisting, organizes itself in their favor. For when someone reads the world with depth, it is because they have already transcended the level where events seem random. Nothing is accidental anymore. Nothing is confusing anymore. Everything fits together, because one who vibrates high not only lives, they understand. And the world faced with such understanding has no choice but to align itself. The third sign of someone who possesses the highest vibration on the planet is the most hidden, the most misunderstood, and the most powerful. It does not appear in the eyes, is not shown in speech, does not depend on behavior. It reveals itself in the silent identity the person chooses to carry. While most live waiting for external proof to then believe, one who vibrates high does the opposite. They believe first, feel first, assume first, and let the world catch up later. They do not seek evidence, they become the evidence. This is the point that divides conscious creators from passive observers. The common man lives in an endless cycle. They want to change, but cannot sustain the new state because they constantly look at what is. They want prosperity but feel poor. They want love but feel rejected. They want healing but feel sick. Their entire identity is tied to the visible, and that is why their vibration fluctuates. But one who vibrates high breaks this prison. They decide to live as one who already is what they wish to be. They assume the role before the play begins. They wear the identity before the world delivers confirmation. They move, speak, act, and think as one who already possesses what they seek, even when nothing around confirms this state. And it is precisely for this reason that everything around begins to confirm it. Scripture says, "Call into existence things that do not exist as if they already existed." It is not a figure of speech. It is instruction. It is law. And one who vibrates high follows this law with precision. They are not trying to manifest something. They are embodying that something. They do not do visualizations hoping they will work. They visualize because this is the life they have already accepted as their own. They do not pretend. They do not force. They do not imagine with despair. They imagine with ownership. They feel like the owner. They enter the state and remain in it, and this remaining changes everything. For physical reality does not bend to desire, it bends to the state. And when someone lives like this, they inevitably begin to act differently, not because they are trying to change life, but because their identity has changed. Their speech has a different firmness. Their steps have a different intention. Their gaze carries a different certainty. They stop insisting, stop seeking proof, stop trying to convince others, because the conviction is already complete within them. And a complete conviction is irresistible. The entire world reorganizes itself to reflect this inner strength. This sign is so powerful that from a distance, some confuse it with arrogance. But it is not arrogance, it is awareness. It is the profound humility of someone who has recognized their own power and decided to use it with respect, precision, and silence. One who vibrates high does not need to announce anything. Their state speaks for them. Their energetic field vibrates before any word. Their demeanor declares to the universe, "I already am." And the universe, obedient to the law, responds, then it is so. When this sign awakens in you, life begins to take improbable paths. People appear out of nowhere, opportunities emerge as if they had been planned. Most call this luck, fate, or coincidence. But you will know the truth. It is merely the inevitable reflection of the identity you sustained when no one saw, when nothing indicated it, when everything seemed contrary. The highest vibration is not emotion. It is not enthusiasm. It is not optimism. It is total identification with what you chose to be, even before proof. And when you identify with the desired state so completely that it becomes your inner home, reality has no choice. It obeys, it mirrors, it confirms. Because the world can only show what you have already become. Now that these three signs have been revealed, understand something with absolute seriousness. None of this was said for you to admire those who vibrate high. It was said for you to remember that this already exists within you. These signs are not spiritual privileges granted to a few. They are natural consequences of someone who decided to stop living in the state of reaction and began to live in the state of creation. You did not come into the world to be swept away by circumstances. You came to govern them from the silence of your imagination, where everything truly begins. To quiet oneself before chaos, to read life as a symbol, and to live as one who already is. These three signs are not behaviors you need to copy. They are spontaneous expressions of an elevated identity. An identity you can assume or now suffer, without proof, without permission, without conditions. For what makes a creator is not what they momentarily feel, but the state they choose to sustain when no one is looking. Therefore, from this instant, abandon the old habit of begging for external changes. Stop asking the world to treat you better, for doors to open, for circumstances to change first. This is living as a consequence, and you were born to be a cause. Reality is not your enemy, nor your judge. It is merely the precise mirror of the state you decide to inhabit. If the reflection does not please you, do not attack the mirror. Change the inner face. Assume stillness. Assume a profound reading of life. Assume the identity of what you wish to be, and sustain this with conviction, with firmness, with silent authority. Let the world catch up to you. Let matter bend. Let circumstances reorganize themselves. They always obey. Always. Walk now with the remembrance that nothing out there has power over you. Nothing can limit what you decide to be. Nothing can prevent the manifestation of the state you sustain as truth. Everything already is. Everything is already within. And when the inside changes, the outside kneels. Stop looking for signs. Listen to me as one listens to a verdict. Everything that happens to you is not by chance. It is a sentence pronounced by the state you have chosen to inhabit. I don't come to calm your anxiety. I come to unmask it. Because the rush for results, the compulsion to check out there, the addiction to seeking confirmation, all of this is the perfect disguise for a silent error that steals your harvest before the seed even breaks ground. This error doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten. It whispers the moment you react to appearances, when you negotiate with doubt, when you behave like someone still begging for what has already been decreed in the invisible. The visible world has no will of its own. It merely reproduces with precision the state you maintain when no one is watching. Look at your life as a mirror. Every delay, every closed door, every word that hurts you is the faithful projection of the internal climate you decided to tolerate. If you want speed, abandon the habit of digging up the seed to see if it's growing. Create within yourself an end so absolute that time becomes irrelevant. The Creator doesn't wait for signs, He emits signs. He doesn't bargain with reality, He orders it in silence. The faith that manifests isn't noisy, it's steadfast. It is the serenity of someone who has already decided and doesn't go back to check. Today I will show you, unadorned, the 5 ways this invisible error infiltrates your day and drains your creative power. And I will give you the exact, simple, and inexorable correction for each one. If you do what I say, you will abandon the role of a beggar of coincidences and take the place that has always been yours, that of cause. From now on, you will not live to react to the world. You will make the world react to your state. Because reality doesn't reward what you ask for, it obeys what you are. The first error is trying to change the world without changing your state. It is the most common and most disguised error because it seems like effort, it seems like faith, it seems like action, but it is merely resistance disguised as movement. The person prays, repeats affirmations, reads books and seeks new techniques, but deep down still feels the same. They want to change circumstances, but don't want to abandon the identity that created them. And so, they live in a loop, reacting, begging, trying, waiting. The world, like an obedient mirror, merely reflects the untransformed state they continue to maintain. The error stems from a deep illusion, the belief that the visible has power, that it's the job, the relationship, the body, the government, the market, the person, anything external that needs to align first for peace to follow. But the truth is the opposite. Nothing changes out there until it changes in here. The physical world is a frozen photograph of your state of consciousness. Trying to alter the reflection without touching the cause is like arguing with a mirror to change your face. It is futile, exhausting, and ultimately despair-inducing. Correcting this error is simple, but it requires courage. Courage to abandon the story you've told yourself about who you are. Courage to stop justifying yourself, to cease lamenting, to look at your current circumstances and say, "This is merely a reflection of who I once was, not who I am now." Changing your state is not a struggle, it is a decision. It is ending the old identity like closing a book and choosing a new plot. The new state doesn't arise from effort, but from recognition. When you see yourself as someone already healed, already loved, already prosperous, even before anything proves it, you shift the axis of creation. The secret is the feeling. Close your eyes and feel the end as real. Don't imagine as one who wishes, imagine as one who remembers. Recall what has already happened, even if it hasn't yet happened in time, because in the invisible realm it already is. And when this becomes more real within you than the world outside, the universe has no choice. It must bow. So, if you want to transform your life, don't start with appearances but with consciousness. Don't try to change the storm. Change your internal climate. Cease effort and return to the principle, everything is state. Inhabit the desired state as your new dwelling and remain in it until the world, obedient as it has always been, begins to change. And you will see, it wasn't the world that transformed. It was you who finally remembered who the Creator is. The second error is to imagine and then doubt. It is the error that kills more dreams than any other because it arises immediately after the moment of creation. The person closes their eyes, imagines the end realized, feels for a few moments the joy of fulfillment, but soon the old habit returns. Their gaze turns back to the world, looking for signs, checking if anything has changed. And in doing so, the individual unconsciously declares that they do not believe. They plant the seed and then dig up the soil to see if it has germinated. And each time they do that, they interrupt the creative process. Doubt is the mind's most silent poison. It doesn't scream, it whispers. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm deluding myself? What if it's just imagination? These questions seem harmless, but each one is a command that dissolves the invisible form of what was about to be born. Imagination is the womb of creation, and when you doubt, you abort the invisible before it becomes visible. Correcting this requires silence. The true creator doesn't ask when or how. They know, they imagine and then rest, because they understand that the creative act was completed the instant they felt it as real. The rest is merely revelation in time. Faith isn't impatience, it's repose. When you imagine with conviction and then surrender, the invisible begins to work in ways your rational mind cannot conceive. But those who doubt want to control. They want to see immediate results, they want proof, they want to accelerate. And by trying to force the visible, they move away from the invisible power. Therefore, learn to trust in stillness. When your mind starts to tempt you with thoughts of, "It hasn't happened yet," respond calmly. It has already happened. It just hasn't been seen yet. That is the language of faith. Here is the secret. The universe is not moved by requests, but by certainties. When you doubt, You delay the natural cycle of manifestation. When you trust, time bends. So imagine, and then don't dwell on it. Walk as one who already possesses. Silent trust is more powerful than 1,000 anxious prayers. And when doubt comes, because it will come, simply observe it, smile, and return to the feeling of the accomplished end. The world will adjust to your firmness, because what you created in imagination already exists, and what exists in the invisible is as real as the ground beneath your feet. Doubt merely postpones, faith merely reveals. The third error is to confuse persistence with effort. Many believe that persisting means repeating the same affirmation 1,000 times, forcing the mind to think positively, or trying to control every thought. But that is not persistence. It is fear disguised as spiritual practice. The true creator doesn't force, they rest. Effort stems from disbelief. It is the desperate attempt to convince oneself of something that has not yet been accepted as truth. When the mind insists, it reveals that it doesn't trust. When consciousness knows, it is silent. The person who lives trying to maintain focus becomes a prisoner of their own vigilance. They exhaust themselves trying not to think incorrectly, trying to constantly feel what they desire, as if the universe were an examiner punishing them for every distraction. But the universe doesn't respond to the quantity of thoughts. It responds to the predominant tone of your internal state. A spark of conviction is more powerful than hours of mechanical repetition. To persist is not to fight against the old state. It is to remain in the new one. It is to return as many times as necessary to the feeling of already being, but without tension. When you realize you've drifted away, don't blame yourself, just return. Do it with lightness, like someone returning home, because that's what you are doing, returning to your true dwelling, the desired state. The correction for this error is simple, but it requires understanding. The power lies in rest. When you achieve the feeling of already having, there is nothing more to do. True persistence is to remain in that rest, even if the world shouts otherwise. It is the calm gaze of one who knows that the invisible is organizing itself in silence. If you want to accelerate your manifestation, abandon haste and effort. Both stem from a belief in lack. Calm, conversely, comes from one who already possesses. The one who knows doesn't need to repeat, they simply remember. The one who trusts doesn't rush, they merely observe. The one who already is doesn't try, they simply live. So when your mind starts pushing you towards effort, when you want to do more, repeat more, control more, stop and breathe. Remember, the Creator doesn't need to convince himself that he created. He merely contemplates his creation and says, "It is done." And when you reach that level of tranquility, you will realize something profound. Effort ceases, the instant faith becomes natural. Persistence then stops being work and becomes a state, the state of one who already is. The fourth error is reacting to appearances. It's the moment when a person says they trust, but at the first contrary sign, everything collapses within them. They imagined, believed, felt, but a single bad news, a rejection, a delay was enough for doubt to reclaim the throne. Reaction is the reflection of what has not yet been mastered within you. It is the old state trying to regain ground, showing that your faith still depends on what your eyes see. And as long as it is like this, power will remain divided, sometimes in the visible, sometimes in the invisible. The world is an obedient screen, not an enemy. It shows, with precision, where you still dwell. When you react, you tell the universe, "I still believe in this." When you remain silent, you affirm, "This no longer defines me." Every emotion is a declaration. Anger is a request to remain trapped. Calm is a decree of mastery. The external world has no power to hurt you. It merely returns the vibration you are emitting. Correcting this error requires observation, not repression. Don't try to feign serenity. Honestly observe your reactions and ask, what state within me is creating this? The simple act of perceiving is already the beginning of transmutation. Because where there is consciousness, there is power. When you begin to see the relationship between your emotion and the events around you, you stop being a victim and become an alchemist. Each time you are tempted to react, remember, this too is your creation. If you created the scenario, you can change it. The highest form of mastery is not forced control, but conscious stillness. The person who masters their reactions is not cold, they are awake. They understand that nothing out there is personal, everything is symbolic. One who understands the symbol no longer fights with the image, they change the cause. And when appearances try to provoke you, when the world seems to contradict what you have already affirmed, simply say in silence, "I know what I have planted." These words are the Creator's shield. They mean, I am not moved by signs, I am moved by certainty. And the more you remain at this point of balance, the more quickly the world begins to reflect your new vibration. Mastering reaction is the boundary between the apprentice and the master, because true power is not in controlling the world, but in not allowing the world to control you. When you reach this state, nothing can move you from your center. And it is in this center, steadfast and silent, that the invisible bows and the impossible begins to move. The fifth error is to act as if it weren't yet. It is the most subtle error, and therefore the most dangerous. The person says they believe, repeats words of power, talks about the law, but lives, acts, and reacts as one who is still waiting for something to happen. It is the state of one who prays for rain while holding a closed umbrella. Their actions, choices, tone of voice, and even way of thinking still betray an identity, that of one who seeks, not one who has already found. And the universe, obedient, merely reflects this vibration of waiting. Many confuse faith with hope, but hope is a noble disguise for doubt. One who waits admits, deep down, that they don't have it yet. True faith doesn't wait, it assumes. That's why manifestation doesn't depend on time, but on identity. You don't receive what you desire, you receive what you are. As long as you are someone who tries to manifest, you will continue to attract situations that keep you trying. The cycle only ends when you stop trying and start being. Correcting this error is to abandon the mask of the seeker and put on the skin of the realized. It is to act, speak, and decide as someone who already possesses, even if the senses deny it. It is the as-if that makes the invisible inevitable. When your mind and body begin to align with your new identity, the world reorganizes to follow you. Reality is not the cause, it is the consequence. It follows the rhythm of your internal state. But it is necessary to understand, acting as if is not pretending. Pretending is theatrical, assuming is creative. Pretending depends on the audience. Assuming depends only on conviction. Pretending tries to convince others. Assumption transforms the being. And when the being changes, the world changes with it. The Creator doesn't merely represent, he embodies. Therefore, live as one who already is. Speak with the serenity of one who already has. Give thanks without expectation, because what is yours has already been delivered in the invisible. Don't ask anymore. Don't beg anymore. Don't wait anymore. Walk in the silent certainty that the invisible precedes you. People will call it luck, coincidence, destiny. But you will know. It was the reflection of your new state. Rapid manifestation doesn't come from haste, but from complete acceptance. When you stop acting like one who seeks and start living as one who already is, time bends. Opportunities arise, doors open, faces change, and the world finally recognizes what you have silently assumed, because the entire universe is waiting for a command, the command of your identity. And when it says, "I already am," the universe responds, "So be it." Now understand, the error was never in destiny, nor in time, nor in people. It was always within you. It was hidden in the way you looked at the world, believing it had power over you, when in truth it was always the opposite. You spent years trying to fix effects, without realizing that the cause lay in the state you chose to maintain. Every struggle, every discouragement, every apparent defeat was merely the faithful reflection of a mind divided between believing and doubting. And it is this division that makes the miracle seem distant, when it has always been within reach of your consciousness. The invisible error is distraction. It is the escape from the present, the attempt to change life with words, but without changing your being. It is the habit of asking God, but acting as one who has not yet been heard. It is imagining and doubting, reacting and trying to control. All of this is the human mind fighting against what is already done. The true creator does not fight. They observe, recognize, decide, and rest. Power is not in force, but in the silent acceptance of truth. The invisible is the only reality, and the visible is merely the delayed photograph of what has already been decided within. As long as you doubt, you delay the inevitable. As long as you react, you confirm the old state. As long as you wait, you declare absence. But when you assume, truly assume, everything changes. Everything. The timeline bends, people move, and the universe rearranges the pieces as if a new law has been pronounced. And it has. Because the word of the conscious person is law. They don't need to repeat 1,000 times what they have already decided. Once, spoken with conviction, is enough to move the invisible. The world around you is not an obstacle. It is a mirror. It perfectly reflects what you have chosen to be. If you want to see another image, don't touch the reflection. Change your face. This is the divine art of creation. Transforming yourself internally until the world has no other option but to follow your new vibration. When you understand this, you will realize that there is no haste or delay, only coherence. The universe is too precise to fail. It can only give you what matches what you are now, so don't ask for signs anymore. Be the sign. Don't clamor for the future. Live as one who has already fulfilled it. Time is not your judge, it is your servant. It merely reveals step by step what your consciousness has already decreed as real. When you change your state, the clock changes with you. Manifestation will stop being something that will happen and will become something that already is, and you are merely watching its revelation. Assume your place. Stop begging for light and recognize that you are the lamp itself. Reality doesn't resist one who decides, and when this decision is born from the center of your being, the entire world conspires to confirm it. There is no fight to wage, no promise to wait for. There is only one choice: to continue being what the reflection shows, or to assume what consciousness declares. Power is not in words, it is in the state behind them. And the most powerful state is the one that says effortlessly, I already am. Sustain that vibration until it becomes natural. And when it becomes natural, the universe will call you by your new name. Not the name you were given, but the name you chose upon awakening: Creator. Because everything that exists, now and always, has been shaped by what you dared to assume as truth. Before you speak, listen. Power is not in the sound of your voice, but in the consciousness that moves it. Every word that comes out of your mouth is a key, and each key opens or closes a world. Most people speak without knowing what they are building. They ask, complain, murmur, and don't realize they are shaping the very destiny they wish to avoid. Man's tongue is the brush of the invisible. Every sentence paints a part of the picture you will call my life tomorrow. When you understand this, you will never speak carelessly again. The first thing I want you to understand is that language is not an instrument of communication, but of creation. Ordinary people use it to be understood. The awakened, to give orders to the invisible. When an ordinary man says, it's difficult, he describes the world. When the conscious man says it is done, he transforms it. Your tongue is the mirror of the state in which your consciousness rests. If it speaks of scarcity, it is because your mind dwells in lack. If it speaks of abundance, it is because your mind has already moved into the realm of sufficiency. It is impossible to hide where you speak from, because every word carries the scent of the state that originated it. The secret lies in speaking from being, not from wanting. The man who says, I want, still confesses absence. The one who says, I am, declares presence. The universe does not respond to desires, it responds to states. Therefore, when you speak as if you already have, the invisible bows and reorganizes the visible to confirm your word. It is not magic, it is law. The word is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between what you imagine and what you experience. When you cross that bridge with faith, the impossible becomes routine. But there is something more subtle that few perceive. The way you use your tongue reveals the kind of kingdom you govern. Fools use it to discuss the past, the conscious to decree the future. Every phrase that repeats I can't and it won't work and maybe one day is a seed planted in the soil of consciousness, and every seed germinates. The world around you is the field where your words have sprouted, and if you want a new garden, you need to change what your tongue sows. Use your voice like a priest before the altar, not like a beggar at the door. You are not a petitioner for miracles, you are their creator. When you open your mouth, the universe listens to your faith, not your words. If you speak with doubt, the echo will be faint. If you speak with certainty, the invisible will move like an obedient wind. That is why I tell you, your tongue is your wand, your sword, your scepter. Learn to wield it with reverence. Because when it aligns with your imagination, even the impossible becomes a servant of your command. The first thing you must understand is that your tongue is a faithful mirror of your inner state. It reveals what your mind truly believes, even when you try to hide it. You can disguise it with gestures, with smiles, with memorized prayers, but the way you speak reveals what you hold in silence. The tongue is the echo of being. When you say, "I can't," things are difficult, maybe one day, you are not just speaking, you are decreeing. You are shaping, through the vibration of your own words, the invisible field that will form your experience. Therefore, the man who understands the law does not speak out of habit, he speaks out of creation. Everything spoken is born of a state. Words are not neutral, they carry the signature of your level of consciousness. When you are in a state of lack, your speech is full of doubts and justifications. When you are in a state of abundance, your speech is serene, firm, almost silent, because the Creator does not need to prove, he merely declares. The outer world is merely the reflection of this inner tone. Many try to change life by changing vocabulary, but they forget that the word is the fruit, not the root. The real work is to change the state from which it sprouts. When the state changes, words naturally align with the new vibration. No one needs to force themselves to speak like a rich person when they already feel prosperous. The tongue merely follows the heart. The most common mistake is to use the tongue to describe, not to decree. The ordinary man looks at what he sees and talks about what is. The awakened man talks about what will be, as if it already is. That is why he creates. He understands that the visible is past, that everything his eyes behold is already dead, and that only the invisible is alive. Therefore, he chooses not to react to the world, but to command it. His words are not born of fear, but of vision. He doesn't say, "One day I will have," but "I already have." He doesn't say, "When it changes," but "It has already changed." And this silent certainty is the seal the universe recognizes. Every phrase you utter is a seed cast into the soil of consciousness. Words do not disappear, they germinate in time. If you plant complaints, you will reap more reasons to complain. If you plant certainty, you will reap evidence of it. Learn to use your tongue as a sacred instrument, for it moves forces your eyes do not see. Speak only when your word is aligned with the state you wish to perpetuate. If you cannot speak with faith, be silent. Silence is the language of creation before the word manifests. And remember, the tongue is a reflection of the mind, and the mind is a reflection of the state. Change the state, and your tongue will become the voice of a new world. The second principle is to understand that your tongue was not made to describe what is, but to declare what will be. Most people use words as a mirror of the world when they should use them as a hammer of creation. By saying, "Things are difficult, life is unfair, no one recognizes me," man seals the fate of his own experience because he reinforces the old. The word is law, and the universe merely confirms the state from which it was born. When you understand this, you realize that every sentence you utter is a silent command given to the invisible. Therefore, the awakened man speaks not of what he sees, but of what he has chosen to see. Visible reality is merely the echo of a past belief. What you call now is just a photograph of an old state. Every time you react to what you see, you feed the reflection, and the reflection traps you. But when you decide to speak as one who has already received, the reflection begins to bow before your conviction. This is how worlds change. It's not with pleas, but with declarations. The ordinary man pleads, the Creator affirms. The ordinary man observes, the Creator commands. And while the former waits for signs, the latter creates the signs with the sound of his own certainty. That is why I tell you, abandon the language of the future. Every time you say, "One day I will have," the universe answers you, "Yes, one day." and that day never comes, because your own word pushes it into tomorrow. Learn to speak in the present, not because the present convinces you, but because it is the only time of creation. I am is the key that opens all portals, and I will be is the door that never opens. He who says I am is not imagining. He is decreeing what the invisible must sustain. And when your word aligns with the right state, the visible world begins to reorganize itself almost magically. People appear, paths open, coincidences multiply, but none of this is luck. It is merely the natural obedience of matter to the voice of the spirit. Don't speak like one who describes the storm. Speak like one who commands the wind. The visible world is silent. It only repeats the sound of your consciousness. You are the verb that moves it. Therefore, from now on, speak as one who already lives in what you desire. Act, think, and vibrate as if the miracle were already routine, and it will be. The third principle is to understand that your tongue must serve imagination, not the emotions of the moment. The unconscious man speaks moved by haste, by anger, by fear, and his words, cast like aimless arrows, end up wounding his own destiny. Every negative emotion that turns into discourse creates a distortion in the invisible field. That is why so many live in repetitive cycles. They complain about what they see, reinforce it with words, and the world merely returns the echo of what they have pronounced. The Creator's tongue does not react, it directs. It does not respond to chaos, it commands order. Emotions are fleeting, but the word is eternal. When you speak from a state of despair, it transforms into a decree. The universe does not distinguish what you desire from what you fear. It merely responds to the vibration sustained by your words. Therefore, the awakened man learns to master the impulse to speak when the heart is in turmoil. He silences himself, withdraws, and speaks only when the spirit reclaims the throne. The word spoken at the right moment is a living seed. The word spoken out of control is a weed. Both grow but produce opposite fruits. The tongue must be at the service of inner vision. Imagine what you want, feel it as real, and only then speak. Your word should not come out as an outburst, but as a decree. The invisible world does not respond to lamentations. It moves before conviction. If you feel sick, don't say, I am sick. Say, health is already manifesting in me. If you feel alone, don't say, no one loves me. Say, I am loved and worthy of love. These declarations are not deception. They are alignment. You are training your consciousness to recognize what is already true on another level. This is how imagination becomes flesh. The ordinary man speaks to relieve his heart. The awakened man speaks to transform reality. He understands that silence is the first act of creation, and the word is the second. Therefore, before speaking, he builds the image in the invisible. When he finally speaks, his voice already carries power because it has been tempered by faith. The secret is not in saying much, but in saying what is born of certainty. Speak little, but speak with authority. Do not react to the world, command it. May your tongue not be a servant of emotions, but an instrument of imagination. For when emotion is silent and vision speaks, even the impossible bows before you. The fourth principle is to bless and not to curse. Most people live captive to the words they utter in moments of ingratitude and judgment. When you curse something, you are not attacking the object of your anger. You are contaminating the field where your own life flourishes. A curse is the poison that the unconscious pours upon itself, believing it is striking another. Every word of criticism, envy, or complaint returns to the sender with the same weight with which it was sent. That is why many create invisible fences around their own prosperity. It is not the world that blocks them. It is the tongue that keeps them trapped in the vibration of lack. To bless is the simplest and most powerful act there is. When you bless, you recognize the divine present in everything, even in what you do not understand. By saying, "This is good," you open a breach in the invisible for good to manifest in a greater way. A blessing is an invitation to expansion. It says to the universe, "I trust." The awakened man does not bless only what pleases him, he also blesses what challenges him, because he knows that every difficulty is a mask that covers a greater gift. He understands that everything that comes into his life came to fulfill a purpose, and that to deny that purpose with words is to reject one's own evolution. Words are instruments of energy. When you bless your home, your health, your work, your family, you are saying to the invisible, I recognize the flow of good in my existence. And the invisible responds by expanding that flow. But when you spend the day murmuring, complaining, comparing, you are ordering the same field to give you more reasons to murmur. The universe is obedient, not selective. It merely returns what your tongue sends. Therefore, learn to use the word like a priest, not like a victim. When someone offends you, bless them in silence, for he who blesses frees himself. When you lack something, give thanks for already possessing it in essence, for gratitude is the language of the Creator. Nothing changes faster than that which is blessed. The awakened man does not react to injustice. He transfigures it with the right word. Where the world sees a problem, he declares, everything works for my good. And the invisible, hearing this, begins to rearrange the threads of reality. Blessing is the seal of supreme trust. When you learn to bless, you cease to be a slave to the visible and become master of the invisible. From then on, your tongue ceases to spread noise and begins to radiate light. Every word becomes a gesture of conscious creation. And where there is light, shadows dissipate on their own. The fifth principle is to remember that your word is a seed, and no seed cast into the field of consciousness returns empty. Every phrase you utter digs an invisible furrow in the soil of the spirit, and in it germinates an inevitable harvest. Therefore, everything you experience today is the echo of old words, perhaps spoken in moments of carelessness, fear, or doubt. The ordinary man speaks and forgets. The awakened man speaks and observes, because he knows that the word is law. Nothing said in a state of true belief is lost in the air. The word is energy shaped into sound, and all energy seeks to manifest itself. The world is the garden of your tongue. If you sow complaint, you will reap more reasons to lament. If you sow gratitude, you will reap abundance. The universe does not judge the content of your speech, it merely obeys it. It does not ask if you desire what you declare, it understands your word as a decree. And the decree, once issued, seeks fulfillment. That is why so many create their own prisons with simple phrases, spoken without thinking. I never succeed. Nothing works out for me. The world is difficult. They are unconscious spells, cast against themselves. The word, used without consciousness, becomes a curse. Used with faith, it becomes a miracle. The awakened man speaks little, but every word of his is worth its weight in gold. He does not waste the word with complaints, nor does he profane it with doubt. He speaks with reverence because he knows that sound is the first movement of creation. When he says, I am, he opens the portal of existence. When he says, it is done, he seals destiny. His words are measured, not by fear, but by wisdom. He understands that speaking is sowing and sowing is destiny. Therefore I tell you, from now on, speak only what you wish to see flourish. May every word of yours be a seed of peace, abundance, and certainty. And if at some point fear tries to speak for you, silence it with silence. Silence is the resting place of the word. Speak only when faith is present, for only it gives life to sound. And when you speak, speak with authority. Do not implore, decree. Do not repeat what you see. Announce what you have chosen to see, for the man who understands the power of the tongue does not fear the future. He plants it, and sooner or later the entire world will become the garden of his words. Everything said so far boils down to a truth that few have the courage to accept. The world does not command you, you command it. Man lives asking for circumstances to change, but forgets that he created them with the sound of his own tongue. He continues repeating the same phrases, the same fears, the same stories, and expects the scenery to transform. But nothing changes as long as the word is a reflection of doubt. The miracle begins when it becomes an extension of certainty. Therefore I tell you, from now on silence the tongue of the beggar and awaken the voice of the Creator. Do not ask for blessings anymore, declare them. Do not describe what you see, command what you want to see. Do not implore for what you desire, assume it is already yours. The universe does not understand please, it understands conviction. Everything you say with faith becomes law in the invisible, and the invisible is the only place where reality is born. If you learn to use your tongue as a scepter, the world will cease to be an enemy and will become a servant. Every word of yours will be a command, and every command will be fulfilled. Therefore, speak as one who governs, not as one who expects to be heard. May your voice emerge from the silence of certainty and not from the noise of lack. When you say, "I am," may the echo resonate throughout the entire universe, and it will know whom it must obey. Creation is not distant. It is in your mouth. And every time you open your lips, you are decreeing what will come. Use your tongue thus, with faith, with discipline, with reverence, and you will see the invisible bow before your inner state. For the world is merely the mirror of the word sustained with conviction. Everything that is because someone dared to say, "I am,"